Okay, here we are back for the second half of Lesson 4, Unit 4, and this is Lesson 4b, the rule of the Safavids. And I can be fairly confident that very few of you have heard of the empire known as the Safavids, probably even less than the ones that had heard of the Ottomans. But we're going to stay with the Muslim empires, those empires that were run by people who believed in Islam. And we're pretty much moving to the east from Europe, and even from the east from the Ottoman Empire. So the area of the world today that we're going to be focusing on, if you looked on a map today, you'd be focusing on places like Iran and Afghanistan and Pakistan and India. That part of the world, the Muslim world, and the Hindu world today was once ruled by two major groups of people, one called the Safavids and the other called the Mughals. A little bit of this will be familiar to you, at least some of the things that they left behind, but we'll probably be learning a lot more about these particular groups of people as we take a look at this particular lesson. All right, a quick review from last time. We looked at the Ottoman Empire last time, the Ottoman Turks, and encompassing the area that now is Turkey. And we looked at how the Ottoman Empire formed and how they expanded. We took a look at the idea that they were focused on taking over territory, but allowing the people that lived in those territories pretty much to live as they had before. There was no mid-level bureaucracy, so the Sultan was the supreme ruler. We also took a look at Ottoman society and a little bit about art, and we recognize that there's a lot of things that the Ottomans gave to us, gave to humanity, that we can still see even today. Your reading for this part of the lesson is going to be the rule of the Safavids. And we're still in chapter 15, finishing that chapter up, pages 468 to 471. So a quick 3 pages, no big deal, and you'll learn a lot more about this particular topic. In terms of terms that I would like you to know, here they are. There's 4 new ones. Some of these you may know already. Anarchy, that might be a term you know, something a little bit about government or lack thereof. You can take a look at that. Orthodoxy, another dealing with kind of religion. The Shah and Safavid. So I'd like you to take a look at those and be ready to answer, or at least define those for your lesson this time. Getting into the material, let's talk a little bit about who these people were, the Safavids, where they were, and when they were. And we're talking at about the same time as the Ottoman Empire rose. To the east of where the Ottomans were, in the area that we consider to be Islam, was an ancient kingdom known as Persia. And at the time of the rise of the Safavid dynasty, what happened was there was a group of Shia Muslims. If you remember last time I talked about that Islam is broken up into 2 main sects, and that is the Shia and the Sunni. The Shia, in this time frame, take control of Persia after the death of a very famous ruler named Tamerlane in the early 1400s. And it becomes known, this area becomes known as the Safavid dynasty. The leader of this particular dynasty is known as the Shah. So where we had the Sultan in the Ottoman Empire, we now have the Shah in the Safavid dynasty. Okay? The Ottomans to the west attempt to destroy the Safavids and take over Persia, but they're unsuccessful. The Safavids are too strong and it extends the Turks too far, so this becomes its own empire. So what's going on? When is the rule of this particular group of people at its zenith or its height? Well, the individual of the most note is a guy named Shah Abbas, who rules from the late 1500s into the early 1600s and oversees this particular dynasty, the Safavid dynasty, at the height of its power. The battle and the army of the Safavids is continuing to have to battle the Ottomans and kind of hold that western flank. So a lot of energy and a lot of manpower is taken care of in that regard. So after the death of this very strong ruler, neighboring nations start to kind of break it up and seize power, and so we start to lose a little bit. And after the end of the Safavids, Persia, the area that is now Iran, enters a real period of anarchy. There's no government. People are doing pretty much what they want to do. A little bit about the social and political systems of this dynasty. They were very tolerant of the differing ethnic groups. Remember, these areas are vast, huge areas, and so whenever you have a dynasty that takes over a large area, you're going to have lots of different people with lots of different beliefs, both politically and religiously, and you can either crush those beliefs and put in your own, or you can be tolerant. And the Safavids decided that being tolerant was best. Much like the Ottoman Empire, the Shah was the absolute ruler. The bureaucracy, who was beholden only to the Shah, took care of all the daily tasks and the government functions. There was good trade. Even though they were enemies, there was still good trade between the Safavids and the Ottoman Empire, and also other parts of Asia as well. And the Safavids are known for some of their beautiful architecture. So both the Ottoman Empire and the Safavids leave behind some incredible buildings and mosques. If we move a little bit further to the east, into the subcontinent of India, we talk about another dynasty. It's also a Muslim dynasty, but it's named the Mughal dynasty. And the Mughals are the remnants of a group of people that are part of the Central Asian dynasties from the 1500s. They moved down into India about that time frame. And the first major ruler is named Babur. And he consolidates power by defeating smaller groups, pulls it all together, and it becomes one large dynasty known as the Mughals. And it's centered, as I said, on modern-day India. The most famous of the Mughal dynasty leaders is Akbar. He's known as Akbar the Great, actually, which is a pretty sweet name if you think about it. Here's a picture of him on this slide. And he is a military genius, so he really has an opportunity to use military technology that he brings from China to his advantage in battle. But he's also a fairly humane and tolerant ruler. So even though he comes to the leadership role because of his military might, he actually is a pretty good politician as well. And he really has an opportunity to move the Mughal Empire forward politically and socially. So it's known as kind of the high point of the Mughal Empire. What brings down the Mughal Empire is an outside force, and we've talked a little bit about how the European nations, the Spanish and the Portuguese and the French and the British, are moving around colonizing areas. Well, now we have an intersection of a couple of different groups we're talking about. So we have the Mughal Empire in India and the British Empire coming up from Europe to try to colonize India. And after Akbar, the Mughal Empire is in a little bit of state of disarray. They're weak and they are open up for some changes. One is that the Hindus, most of the people in India, are of the Hindu and not Muslim religion, and so they begin to rise up above and revolt against the Muslim rulers. And of course there's huge issues in India and Pakistan right now with anger between the Hindu majority in India and the Muslim minority. And in the early 1600s, the British arrive and help kind of break down the Mughal Empire even further. The superior technology that the British bring, even though the Mughals do have firearms, the British technology is superior, and it finally ends up the Mughal rule, and the British take control of the subcontinent of India. Some of the things they leave behind, though, the Mughals, is some changes to society and art. And one of the most famous is pictured on this particular slide, which you may recognize, the Taj Mahal. If anybody's seen the movie Slumdog Millionaire, you know that part of that movie is filmed at the Taj Mahal. And this was an incredible palace built by a prince in the Mughal Empire to give to his bride. There's a real blend that occurs in the Mughal Empire between the Muslim and Hindu cultures. And so you see that also in both their society and their art and their architecture. For the most part, the Indians, generally Hindu, are incredibly poor under the Mughals, and so that's one of the reasons why they rise up. But this fusion of Indian and more Arabic styles can be seen throughout the Mughal area, what's left in its art and architecture. It's really quite beautiful. So that's a little bit about what's going on in both the Persian areas and also in the Indian subcontinent. And we'll be talking more about that when we get back to the Muslim empires later in the year. Thanks a lot, and we'll talk.